So today, we're going to dive deep into a country that, on the map, it can seem pretty small.
Right. It's about, what, 69,700 square kilometers?
Exactly. But its historical footprint and its geopolitical significance are just hmm, absolutely massive. If you want a shortcut to understanding where Europe meets Asia, this is the country to know.
And that country is Georgia.
Yeah.
It is the definition of a geographic pressure cooker.
Just look at where it is on the map.
I mean, you have Russia to the north, Turkey and Armenia to the south, Azerbaijan to the southeast.
And the Black Sea to the west.
Yeah.
It's at a historical crossroads where empires just constantly clashed.
Constantly.
So our mission today is to chart Georgia's journey, looking at the sources you provided. We'll go from its classical kingdoms all the way up to its modern and often turbulent drive for Euro-Atlantic integration.
And we really have to understand how these repeated external pressures, Russian, Ottoman, Iranian, how they didn't just shape borders, they forged the entire national identity.
It's a story of survival, really.
Yeah.
And pivoting.
Absolutely. To understand their current pro-Western stance, you have to appreciate just how deep their independent past goes. We're talking thousands of years.
Okay, let's unpack that. Our sources take us way back to the classical foundations, specifically mentioning the independent kingdoms of Colchis and Iberia. For anyone who might not be a classics buff, how do we, anchor those names?
Well, we anchor them in mythology, actually. These places were famous even to the ancient Greeks. Colchis, specifically, is often tied to the myth of Jason and the Argonauts.
The quest for the Golden Fleece.
That's the one. And that connection tells you immediately that this region was known for its wealth, for its trade routes, for being a central hub, even in antiquity.
That makes it so much more relatable. These aren't just footnotes, they were ancient centers of power. And speaking of ancient, here's where we hit a huge cultural aha moment.
Yes, this is critical. While we tend to think of Christianity spreading through the Roman Empire, the sources highlight that Colchis and Iberia adopted Christianity in the early 4th century.
The early 4th century, that's a massive head start.
A huge one. It places their Christian history right alongside, or in some cases even before, the major Western powers.
So if they adopted Christianity that early, why didn't they just naturally fall into the orbit of, say, the Byzantine Empire or get Western protection? Why the constant pressure from other directions?
That is the paradox of Georgia's location. That early Christian identity became a shield, a source of incredible cultural unity, but it also made them an island.
An island surrounded by different faiths.
Exactly. They were positioned directly between the rising Islamic caliphates and later the Ottoman and Persian empires. So their early faith solidified their unique culture, but it also set them up for centuries of, well, cultural conflict.
And that cultural foundation eventually led to their true high point, the Golden Age.
Yes. If we're talking about the absolute peak of Georgia's political, military, and economic success, we are looking at the 11th and 12th centuries.
This is their period of national self-definition.
It really is. It happened under two incredible monarchs. King David V, often called David the Builder, and his great-granddaughter, Queen Tamar.
What did David the Builder do that was so foundational?
He unified the state, and crucially, he defeated massive Seljuk Turk invasions. He really cemented their military prowess on the world stage.
But Queen Tamar, she seems to be the figure that really resonates in Georgian memory. What did the sources tell us about the flourishing under her reign?
Tamar's reign, that was the pinnacle of their cultural output. Economically, the country controlled major trade routes. They were immensely wealthy. And culturally, this is the era of Shodo Rustaveli's epic poem, The Knight in the Panther's Skin.
So this wasn't just about political expansion.
Not at all. It was societal flowering. It gave them the cultural blueprint for their modern identity. I mean, if you visit Tbilisi today, the legacy of David the Builder and Queen Tamar, that period of pure, powerful sovereignty, is the national ideal they're still fighting to reclaim.
That success, though, it sounds like it painted a large target on their backs.
A huge one. The Golden Age was followed by just an unrelenting series of devastating invasions. It truly became that pressure cooker we mentioned earlier.
And the list of invaders is brutal.
It is. After the 13th century, first they were hit by the Mongolian Empire, which fractured the unified kingdom. Then, for centuries, they were caught between the Ottoman Sultanate and various Iranian dynasties.
So for the next, 500 years, they were rarely fully independent.
Rarely. They were mostly a fragmented tributary state, just caught in this massive geopolitical tug of war.
And that vulnerability, that constant pressure, meant that when some kind of stability finally arrived, it wasn't on their own terms.
No, it wasn't. And that sets the stage for the fateful pivot into the Russian orbit.
In the 19th century.
Exactly. It started subtly, late 18th century, the weakened kingdom of Kartli-Kakheti sought protection, and they formed an alliance with the Russian Empire.
But the sources make it clear that relationship changed very quickly.
It went from protection to annexation. Russia formally annexed the area in 1801.
That's a classic imperial playbook move. Offer help, then take control. But this wasn't just an internal decision by the Tsar, was it? It had international legitimacy.
It did, and this is such a key detail for you to understand. Russia's control was confirmed by the Treaty of Lulistan in 1813.
Who was that treaty with?
It was signed between the Russian Empire and the Qajar dynasty, the ruling Persian power. By signing it, the Qajars essentially gave up their claim to eastern Georgia.
Which gave the Tsar a recognized legal framework.
At least internationally, yes. It fundamentally locked Georgia into Russia's sphere of influence for the next 2 centuries.
And they stayed locked in until the chaos of the Russian Revolution in 1917, which created this sudden window of opportunity.
The speed of this reversal is just astonishing. In the upheaval, Georgia declared its independence. It briefly became the first republic, formed under the protection of Germany and Britain.
Wait, Germany and Britain?
Yes, which shows you that even then, the priority was anchoring themselves outside of the Russian sphere. They immediately looked west for security guarantees.
But that independence was heartbreakingly short-lived.
Tragically short. Just 4 years later, 1921, the Bolsheviks reinvaded. Georgia was violently forced to join the Soviet Union as the Georgian Soviet Socialist Republic.
And that reinvasion just erased that brief moment of modern statehood.
Completely erased it. And that 70-year Soviet period, from 1921 to 1991, is so critical for understanding Georgia today.
Right, because it really set the stage for the chaos of the 1990s.
Absolutely. The USSR tried to suppress their national identity, the Georgian language, the Orthodox Church, but it never really worked. It was just driven underground.
And then there was the economic impact.
The forced collectivization of agriculture. It caused widespread suffering in what was a traditionally agrarian society.
But there's an irony here, because Georgians also played this powerful, if very complicated, role within the Soviet system itself.
Of course. The most infamous example being Joseph Stalin, who was Georgian. His origin didn't spare the republic from totalitarianism, but it created this very strange tension.
Where they were central to the project, but also repressed.
Exactly. It fostered this deep, simmering resentment and a suppressed nationalism that just exploded when the Soviet Union started to crumble.
Which brings us to the modern era. April 1991, the modern Republic of Georgia is formed. But the sources paint a picture of severe internal strife.
The transition was brutally difficult. The country inherited ethnic tensions, and the economy was completely shattered. The entire 1990s were just defined by civil and economic crisis.
They were trying to do everything at once.
Build a new democracy, transition to a market economy, and fight internal conflicts simultaneously. It was a mess.
Until a pivotal moment in 2003, an event that signaled a definitive end to that uncertainty. The Rose Revolution.
This was the critical turning point. It wasn't just a change in leadership. After the peaceful protests, Georgia made an explicit choice.
To look west.
A clear pro-Western foreign policy, prioritizing European and Euro-Atlantic integration above all else. This was meant to permanently end that cycle of Russian domination.
And that explicit, irreversible choice,
Yeah.
It immediately came with some profound consequences.
It certainly did. That decision to prioritize NATO and EU membership was seen by Russia as crossing a fundamental red line.
In its traditional sphere of influence.
Right. And this friction immediately caused a profound deterioration in relations. It just escalated relentlessly.
And that escalation culminated in military conflict.
The policy choice made in 2003 was the primary ideological catalyst that triggered the Russia-Georgia War in 2008.
So Georgia's attempt to permanently pivot west was met with a swift military response.
A response aimed at halting that process and creating permanent instability within Georgia's borders.
And yet, despite that devastating consequence, Georgia hasn't abandoned that goal.
They are unwavering. They're a member of the Council of Europe, focused on human rights and democracy. And crucially, they're a member of the GEAM organization.
GEAM. Okay, that's a technical term.
Right.
What does that tell us about their strategy?
GEAM connects Georgia with Ukraine, Azerbaijan, and Moldova. And what's fascinating about that group is that all 4 nations share key characteristics.
Former Soviet republics.
All pro-Western and all facing territorial conflicts supported by Russia. GOAM is basically a regional alliance designed to foster cooperation outside of Moscow's influence.
It's a very clear statement.
Yeah.
Now, we have to address the current political reality, the unresolved territorial issues from the 2008 war.
Right. This is where we get into the complex issue of de facto independence versus international recognition. The sources focus on two territories, Abkhazia on the Black Sea and South Ossetia.
And for the listener, why were these regions in particular targeted?
Because they were multi-ethnic regions with historical, though minority, separatist movements. Russia instrumentalized those movements, pouring in support, establishing permanent military bases.
Creating a constant thorn in Tbilisi's side.
Exactly. It was designed to make Georgia ineligible for NATO membership because NATO won't admit a country with unresolved territorial disputes.
So these territories are essentially geopolitical leverage points. What's their status globally?
They received only very limited international recognition after the 2008 war, mainly from Russia and a few allied states.
But the rest of the world?
The overwhelming majority, the UN, the EU, they all still formally recognize these areas as integral parts of Georgia, and this distinction maintains a constant state of tension.
That complexity is even reflected in how they count their own people. The sources note the population is about 3.75 million, but that excludes the people in Russian-occupied Abkhazia and South Ossetia.
It's a painful demographic exercise. The country is literally counting its citizens based on the boundaries it currently controls, a very physical measure of the cost of these pressures.
Okay, so zooming out, what is the single biggest takeaway from this whole journey?
I think the key takeaway is that Georgia's history is defined by this deep, continuous tension between sovereignty and domination.
The Golden Age versus the centuries of being a tributary state.
Exactly. They have these brilliant, culturally rich periods of independence, and they're inevitably challenged or just erased by a cycle of external control. That cycle was cemented with the 1801 annexation, violently reaffirmed in 1921.
And the Rose Revolution was an attempt to finally break that cycle.
It was. Aligning with Europe was a move that created their current struggles, but it also defines their hope for the future.
It's the ultimate story of a small nation fighting for its right to choose its own fate. A powerful story. So, our final thought for you to mull over connects all these dots. We've traced modern Russian control back to that 19th century treaty, the annexation, and then the shocking speed of the 1921 reinvasion. Consider this. Russia's justification today for recognizing the de facto independence of Abkhazia and South Ossetia is often framed in terms of historical security concerns. How does the legacy of those 19th and early 20th century moves continue to directly inform the arguments used to justify the reality on the ground today?
The past in the Caucasus isn't just a history lesson, it's the operational playbook.
That was the deep dive. We'll see you next time.